Good morning, friends and enemies. In today's video, we're going through the week 10 waiver wire fodder, all right? All the players trending up, all the players trending down, who you could drop, who you should be adding. And the trade deadline is approaching today at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You will likely see this video afterwards. I didn't know how to approach it. I was thinking waiting until I filmed until afterwards. What I'm going to do is go through as if no trades happen. However, if trades do happen that affect fantasy relevant players, I will be going back and filming little snippets with updates that we will put at the beginning of the video. So you've already actually watched those parts as we go through, just as a preset to say anything I talk about from now on is being done 9 a.m. Eastern time. Any updates that happen between now and then will be there for you in the video anyways. Okay, first trade deadline update. Jakobi Meyers on the move to Jacksonville in exchange for a 4th and a 6th round pick. What does this mean for this week's waiver wire? One, Parker Washington obviously becomes a lot less enticing. We have a few pieces of news that we could actually update here. Adam Schefter came out and said that Brian Thomas Jr. is dealing with a low-grade high ankle sprain and has a chance to play this upcoming week. I don't know about you guys, but it felt like for a long time, a high ankle sprain was the death sentence for a fantasy player. And then all of a sudden, somewhere like last year or 2 years ago, this version of a low grade high ankle sprain was just like invented out of nowhere. And now people could just play through it where it was like, oh, you're out 3 to 4 weeks, no doubt about it with a high ankle sprain. And now it's like this different thing. So Brian Thomas Jr. might be playing. Jakobi Meyers fits Jacksonville pretty well, I think, for an over-the-middle slot wide receiver now that Travis Hunter is out. So obviously this puts a big damper on Parker Washington because I think you were using him for a 1-week fill-in. If BTJ is there, if they allow Jakobi Meyers to suit up, they play against Houston. This makes him a lot less enticing for this 1-week fill-in. Can he still put together like a wide receiver 30-ish week? And can you use him in the flex? Probably. Feel a lot better if BTJ and or Jakobi Meyers were not playing this week, but a lot less enticing of a long-term pickup. On the Raiders side of things, on Sunday, we saw just 3 wide receivers run even one route. That was Trey Tucker, Jakobi Meyers, and Tyler Lockett. So Tyler Lockett, you'd think, oh, he's old, he's washed up. No way they're actually going to play him over the rookies. Problem is, Pete Carroll is the coach there. Pete Carroll was the coach for Tyler Lockett for a long time in Seattle. I wouldn't be surprised if they just trust him and they let him run routes out there over some of the rookies. Now, what I think is ultimately going to happen, Trey Tucker gets a big boost. He is the theoretical wide receiver 1 there. They're going to run a ton of 12 personnel between Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. Both of them ran around 75 to 85% of the routes on Sunday. So they'll go very heavy 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, Trey Tucker being one of them. And then it's a toss-up between Tyler Lockett, who was the guy who ran those routes on Sunday. You have Jack Besh, who was their day 2 pick. And I think his skill set most similarly aligns with Jakobi Meyers being a bigger bodied possession receiver, can be inside, can be outside. Deontay Thornton was really exciting in the summer, but you could see by the way that they started playing him very early on in the year, they completely lost trust in him because he went from being a damn near every down player to not playing a single snap anymore. So I'd be shocked if he was the one they gave a chance to. I feel like Lockett really doesn't have upside. He's most likely to probably run the most routes and play the most. If I'm taking an upside shot swing, probably Besh. I'll probably go for Besh. He's not someone I'm going to overspend on, though. Few dollars in fab if you want to. But yeah, from a waiver wire perspective, I think it's just a slight downgrade for Parker Washington. If Trey Tucker is for some reason available on your waiver wire, would be a very big boost to him. And then if you want to swing on someone like a Jack Besh or a Tyler Lockett, those are probably the next names. Okay, trade number 2. Shit is starting to pop off right now. We're not going to go into the Sauce Gardner moves. This is a fantasy waiver wire video. Rashid Shaheed is getting moved to the Seattle Seahawks, all right? Shaheed and Jakobi Meyers felt like the most likely players, like the steam behind them, plus their contract situation, plus their talent level, made a lot of sense that both of those guys were being moved. Shaheed goes to Seattle, which now just destroys everything I've been saying about Tory Horton. Unfortunately, we already had Rashid Shaheed at home. We already had Rashid Shaheed at home in Tory. What are we doing? Now Shaheed links back up with Clint Kubiak, former coach in Seattle now. I think it's a really good move for Seattle. Honestly, I think it's a really good fit. Now, again, this makes Cooper Kupp toast. This really hurts Tory Horton, and now I probably would not suggest picking him up off the waiver wire. What this does do is open things up for Chris Olave to get more targets. I think it makes Juwan Johnson a really strong streaming tight end now. No one behind Olave in the receiving group do I want. Like Brandon Cooks is running a ton of routes, but he's just getting exercise out there. So I think this is, I don't want to say it's a boost for Shaheed because honestly, statistically, he's been pretty good in New Orleans and the passing volume has been crazy. He'll get more deep shots, consistent deep shots, and probably more accurate deep shots. So I like this for Shaheed. Doesn't do anything for JSN. Obviously, stock down for Tory Horton and Cooper Kupp. And then in New Orleans, stock up for Olave and Jawan Johnstein. The first name on here, Parker Washington, Jacksonville receiver, comes as no surprise to anyone that watched football this Sunday. He has basically been the only receiver that's had some semblance of chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. Now, the big news for Parker Washington is Travis Hunter's on the IR. Brenton Strange still needs to miss at least one more game to return from his IR stint. De'Ami Brown suffered a concussion, which leaves him at 50-50 for Week 10. And then Brian Thomas Jr., from all the Twitter doctor chatter, it seems like he has likely suffered some variance of a high ankle sprain. Liam Cohen has like a fetish with Parker Washington, loves to give him carries, gives him an insane amount of targets. I mean, he popped off on Sunday for, I think, 9 targets, 8 catches, 90 yards. So he's stupidly involved. The one downside is they play at Houston this upcoming week, and I just imagine that this Jacksonville offense is going to have so much trouble moving the ball against this Houston defense. So Parker Washington, I'm a little bit skeptical about this upcoming week, but if these injuries sustain, though Brenton Strange probably should be back, De'Ami Brown's absence would probably be at worst 1 week, but we don't want to predict the concussion length of it. I will say over the next month of the season outside of Houston, they have a great schedule for fantasy quarterbacks and receivers. After Houston, you get the Chargers, not a really easy matchup, but then you get Arizona, Tennessee, Indy, and the New York Jets. So good matchups there. So Parker Washington, I'm not going crazy with him. He's a dude that, like, if you need a flex fill-in over the next couple of weeks in our waiver wire rankings, which will be updated and live by the time you guys watch this, which gives fab suggestions. It gives legit like rankings of who I would choose over another player. Those are live on BDGE.co. If you're a big dog member, monthly membership, you can get it for the cheapest way, $10 free for the next 3 months if you download our partner app, MGM. Use code BDGE when you do so and play any slip on there when you deposit $10 or more for the first time. Code BDGE on MGM. Now, the guy that I'm really excited about here is Tory Horton. Tory Horton is the rookie for Seattle, and he was a dude that I really liked in the preseason throughout the summer. I drafted him in your idiot league mates and picked him back up on Sunday before games kicked off. Cooper Kupp sidelined with what's being said to be a heel injury. If you guys follow Dr. Jesse Morse on Twitter, he thinks that he could possibly be dealing with some sort of nerve injury plus a hamstring injury. What I would say was the most optimistic part of this is Seattle just had their bye in week 8. So the fact that Cooper Kupp had the bye week and then didn't get a single limited practice in throughout the week 9 game tells you that he could be off for another week or multiple weeks. And in Tory Horton's first game as the starter, played on 73% of the snaps, but ran almost 85% of the routes. And they were up huge at halftime, so they didn't need to pour it on in the second half. But he caught all 4 of his targets, 48 yards, had 2 first half touchdowns. Like, he's a real separator and field stretcher, something that Cooper Kupp does not have. Now, if Cooper Kupp is active, I have very little confidence that Tory Horton's going to be anything more than like a 50% snap guy. But for the next couple of weeks, like Arizona at home, if Cooper Kupp misses that game, I think Horton is a very, very viable flex option. I think he is one of those dudes over the second half of the year. They get a lot of good matchups on their schedule going forward. They have Arizona, they get Tennessee, Indianapolis, and then Carolina in week 17. So I like Tory Horton second half of the year. Next up, we got Darius Slayton, who I still think is a really good pickup right now, despite his kind of lackluster box score. You know, we look back at week 8, his first game from the hamstring injury return, 2 for 26. But again, he had that OPI called back on like a 60-yard touchdown that was kind of questionable. Could have had a much bigger day. This week against San Fran, 5 for 62, very usable day. You get Chicago next week, who just allowed almost fucking 500 passing yards to Joe Flacco. So I think Darius Slayton is a very good pickup. He's seeing most of the air yards in that offense. Won't lead Wan'Dale Robinson in targets, but will be the downfield stretcher, and they badly need playmakers. So I think Slayton is a very, very solid flex play going forward, especially in good matchups against Chicago. Alec Pierce is kind of similar. He has now strung together a bunch of good weeks this year. He is a full-time player, and Daniel Jones is, of course, playing out of his mind. They play in Germany. I will be at that game. Any Germans want to hit us up? We're doing a fan meetup at a bar on Saturday in Berlin. Going to be a movie. Hit me up on Instagram or Twitter or whatnot. But they play Atlanta. Tough passing defense, so I'm not overly optimistic about Pierce right now, but he's a solid flex play to have on your roster. The rest of the names of the wide receiver, I think Jayden Reed is a pretty good stash. We don't know when he's going to be back, but this will hit the 8-week mark from his collarbone and foot surgery. So he should be nearing a return kind of soon. He was back at practice last week, just like working in a limited fashion on the sideline, not like actually back at practice. But you know, he's inching closer. I think he'll probably be activated to return within the next like couple weeks. And obviously with the Tucker Kraft injury and Matthew Golden not really shaping up to be what they wanted him to be in this offense, I think Reed will probably return to his normal role of like a 60-70% guy. And we know what Jayden Reed is. He's a really, really solid like wide receiver 3 flex option in this offense. So I think down the stretch, Jayden Reed should be a dude that you can stash right now, though I don't know that you need to do it right now because we haven't had a lot of like updates or any news that really like would attract your league mates to go get him. But if you got an IR spot and you got a luxury spot to have on your bench, go for it. Same thing with Cedric Tillman, but to a much lower degree. He will be likely returning this week. They're playing against the New York Jets. I mean, the Browns passing offense is so uninspiring, so I'm not dropping anything more than probably like a 0 to 1% fabid on Cedric Tillman. And then the other situation I think is worth talking about would probably be Kayshon Boutte dealt with a hamstring injury on Sunday. And he actually, I saw a report that he posted in his personal Discord that it was a grade 1 strain and that he actually used the word sprain. So this could be a knee injury instead of a hamstring injury. I'm not sure. He said there's a possibility that he could push to play this weekend against Tampa Bay, but more likely he is eyeing a return for Thursday Night Football against the Jets next week, which, you know, players are optimistic. So it could end up being a 2-week absence because Thursday night is obviously a short week for him. In his absence, I really don't know that I want to start anyone behind Stefon Diggs. I think it's easy to look at Demario Douglas and be like, oh, look, he went 4 for 100 and a touchdown. He's going to have a lot of routes open up for him. And I do think there's credence to that. However, if you actually look at the routes run in this game, Demario Douglas was down at 33% despite Boutte leaving with the hamstring injury. Kyle Williams, the rookie, and Matt Collins were both at 50%, which just presents a problem because if they're all running 50% of the routes, then you don't want any of those guys in your lineups. I just feel a little bit better about Stefon Diggs. Ultimately, if I had to lean one way, Kyle Williams hasn't done shit this year, so maybe they give him a little bit more extended run, but the dude hasn't had a catch since week 3, despite Boutte going down this weekend with the hamstring injury. I would lean Demario Douglas because he's a veteran and they probably trust him just like run the right routes. And we've obviously seen him make some spike plays over the course of the season, and that's, you know, going to happen with Drake May and how well he's playing. But overall, very hard to trust any of those guys. At running back, I mean, I'm not really interested in most of these guys that are owned in less than 50%. I think legitimately they're all just, you know, you can roster them if you want. They're under 50% owned. They're handcuffs at best. Like, I'm not buying into the Devin Singletary is now ahead of Tyrone Tracy. I'm not saying that Jared Patterson is ahead of Kamani Vidal. This is a point that I made yesterday in the stream and something that I just tweeted out a couple minutes ago. You can go follow me on Twitter at Nick Ercolano. But the problem with fantasy, at least like being a little bit skeptical when you're ranking these backup running backs that move into a starter role, is if you're a backup running back and the starter gets hurt and you're the presumed starter, you're likely going to get the first crack at it. And there's a much higher chance that you are, you know, the workhorse for that upcoming week or the upcoming weeks. But if you're the backup, there is always the chance that the coach goes with a hot hand approach. And that's not the case with the starter. The starter is the starter and he'll get the starter reps. But we now saw it with Tyrone Tracy. We saw it with Kamani Vidal. We even saw it to an extent with Rashad White and Sean Tucker. We saw it last night with Amari DiMarcado. And again, it's not the most likely scenario, but listen, if the starter goes out and the first 3 carries go for 6 yards or something like that, and then the Devin Singletary comes in or the backup comes in and then rips off a 9 or an 11-yard run, like the coach is going to give that hot hand approach a chance. And that could kind of sink the game. So it's not necessarily that I don't like these backup running backs, obviously, but it is to caution you with when you're making sit-start decisions. It's not a guarantee that this guy automatically gets the workload of the guy in front of him. And that's, you know, that's an approach, or that's a lesson you learn over the years of playing fantasy football. A lot of the time it hits, but not all the time, right? And just giving a little bit of foresight, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened one of these upcoming weeks to like Terrell Jennings and Travion Henderson. Like, we saw Travion Henderson get more work than Terrell Jennings, but it wouldn't surprise me if Ramondre Stevenson continues to miss time with the turf toe, if one of these upcoming weeks Terrell Jennings got more carries than Travion Henderson, and that would obviously make everybody lose their mind. But like, that's what happens when backup running backs are the backup running backs. They are that person for a reason. And the coach doesn't have this like affinity or tie to them getting an insane amount of workload. Like, if the third string running back is playing better than the second string running back, they're okay with letting that guy kind of ride that. And that's my approach with like most of these backups. And I do think the following week, like, I am sure Tyrone Tracy and Kamani Vidal will get the starter role and it will be theirs to lose again. But there's always that possibility that the hot hand ruins them. So when you're making sit-start decisions, again, just sprinkle in a little bit of skepticism. Just drop them down 1, 2, 3 spots in the rankings. for that option to possibly happen. But yeah, besides all that bullshit, like everyone on here that's above 50% owned obviously needs to be owned. Isaiah Davis, you will either have seen me talk about Breece Hall getting traded, and that would be phenomenal for me. As you can see, I'm the guy who owns. I mean, look at this list here. Look at the guys that I own. Manungai, Rico Dowdle, Isaiah Davis in this league. How he doing? Just feasting on the waiver wire. I mean, listen, if Breece Hall got traded, Isaiah Davis just steps into a full-time role. He'll be a low-end RB2 for me that you could absolutely feel confident flexing because of the volume. Rodriguez kind of falls into that conversation I just had where they're just kind of riding the hot hand on a week-to-week basis. Dylan Sampson, you can keep an eye on practice reports for Quinshon Judkins, but I would expect him to suit up this week. Moving over to the tight end position, I think the two that we need to talk about here are definitely top of the list. Luke Musgrave, because Tucker Kraft's ACL tear. Musgrave is going to go into a very, very prominent opportunity. We'll put it that way. I won't say role because I don't know that they're going to force anything towards Luke Musgrave. Him and Kraft are very, very different types of players. They were starting to build the offense, the passing offense around Tucker Kraft. Now, Musgrave will run some of the routes. Musgrave will have some of the plays drawn up for him, but not to that extent. Like, I think we'd be lucky to get 65% of Tucker Kraft in Luke Musgrave. He'll run probably all of the routes, and I do think at this point it is a very valuable role to be had, but Luke Musgrave is just not the player Tucker Kraft is. He's not the player with the ball in his hands. He's not just as good of a well-rounded tight end as Tucker Kraft is. Obviously, Kraft was emerging into a top 5, top 3 guy in the league right now, so brutal injury. Luke Musgrave, I think this puts him on the streaming radar on a week-to-week basis. I think there are definitely going to be weeks where you have better options to start over him. He's not a must-start for me by any stretch of the imagination. I just tweeted out this stat as well. He has had 1 regular season touchdown in his career through 24 career games. Remember, Musgrave and Kraft were drafted in the same year. They took Musgrave above Tucker Kraft in that draft. Musgrave also has not topped 35 receiving yards in a regular season game since I think it was week 10. It's either week 8 or week 10 of 2023. Obviously, being the backup, that's hard to do, but like you had the chance to be the starter there, lost it to Tucker Kraft, who we are learning is obviously an elite tight end right now. So maybe there is a little bit of room for like, okay, you couldn't beat out Tucker Kraft. Maybe it's not that bad. So again, Luke Musgrave, I'm looking at him as like a top 15 option rest of way just because of how prominent the role is. Coleston Loveland, I am much more on the side of this probably being fool's gold here. Massive game against Cincinnati, which is great to see. 7 targets, 6 catches, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that game winner where he like fucking pinballed off 17 Cincinnati Bengals defensive players. I mean, they have just the woat linebacker group. They have safeties that just cannot tackle anybody. This was the same Cincinnati team that let Pat Freiermuth drop 28 fantasy points on them in the year 2025. So Coleston Loveland, prior to this game, if you look at his receiving yardage line, had not topped 3 catches or 40 yards in a single game. Cole Kmet left the game with a concussion. That is like the obvious elephant in the room here. If Cole Kmet is playing, then Coleston Loveland is he's not even close to a feature part of this offense. That's the problem here is like Cole Kmet has been good enough or usable enough for the Bears offense that it just ruins Loveland's fantasy upside. So there's a 50-50 chance that Kmet plays next week with a concussion. They play against, I believe, the New York Giants, which is a great matchup, which absolutely puts Loveland in the streaming conversation if Kmet misses. But from weeks 1 through 8, Cole Kmet has played 65% of the snaps. Loveland has played 52% of the snaps. So if Kmet misses, Loveland moves into a prominent role. If he does not, he is not even close to a featured part of this offense, unfortunately. And the blow-up week was, I am confident in saying it is a 1,000% a product of the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And the quarterback position we'll run through very, very quickly because it's just really Marcus Mariota. When I do the QB positions in these videos, it's more so for Superflex League focused. And if you guys are streaming quarterbacks, just figure it out. It ain't that hard. Mariota obviously will be the starter in Washington for the foreseeable future with Jayden Daniels out with the dislocated elbow. There's not word on Daniels in terms of his return timetable. I would just almost assume / guarantee he'll be on the IR. Maybe he comes back and finishes the year, but in one quarterback leagues, I think he's droppable for the most part. Mariota, he'll be like a streaming quarterback 2. He'll be like a quarterback 2 option for you in Superflex leagues. I know he does have some spike weeks because of his legs, but the offense has looked brutal this year. They don't have Terry McLaurin. They don't have any receivers that can separate, and it's made this offense just so one-dimensional and really, really just like they can't get anything going there. So Terry, I'm expecting to miss more time with the re-aggravated quad injury, which doesn't make me feel great about Marcus Mariota. I think you could probably expect him to go between like 12 and 15 points in most weeks, which is obviously very usable in Superflex if you need a quarterback 2, but I'm not going crazy with him. So I think that's all I have for right now. prior to the trade deadline in 6 or so hours. We'll go down the trending down tab list. We'll start at running backs. Samaje Perine is, I believe, going to be on the IR, so you could for sure drop him. Brashard Smith, I mean, they have the bye, and then Pacheco probably returns. So, yeah, I mean, the pipe dream for Brashard Smith, if it did not come to fruition against the Bills when they were in catch-up mode the entire time, doesn't look like it's happening there, unfortunately. You could definitely drop him if you need to. Emmanuel Wilson, he's just a high-end handcuff. Michael Carter can be dropped. Zonovan Knight, I might hold on to, but they play at Seattle, so it's not like you're going to start him anyways. Trey Benson should be back, I think, within the next couple weeks, so it's fine. JCM, I would not drop. Jayden Blue, you can definitely drop. Isaiah Davis, depending on what happens at the trade deadline. If Breece Hall does not get moved, yeah, you could drop Isaiah Davis. He is a high-end handcuff. Tank Bigsby, high-end handcuff. Pacheco, I might hold through the bye. Haskins can definitely drop. Hill can definitely drop. Ramondre, throw in your IR. I wouldn't drop. Kenneth Gainwell, I probably wouldn't drop either. Just another guy in the high-end handcuff range. When you look at the matchups, though, going forward, Chargers, actually, you can run against the Chargers. They get Cincy, Chicago, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami. Like those next 5 weeks afterwards, if something were to happen to Warren, Kenneth Gainwell would be kind of like a league winner at that point. Wide receiver, Shamir DK. I mean, listen, it's like you guys are acting like this is shocking that DK had a bad game. He had the return touchdown, but like this is what you're going to get out of the Tennessee wide receivers. They are on a bye, and maybe Calvin Ridley got moved at the trade deadline, but if not, he'll probably be back after the bye. So yeah, you could hold on to him. You could drop him. I don't care. Mooney, man, I still believe in Mooney, so I'm not going to drop him. Golden, I'm probably not going to drop, but I get it if you need to. Keon Coleman, I mean, he gets the matchup against Miami and then Tampa Bay, so 2 good matchups. You might be really desperate at wide receiver. I know in your idiot league mates, my league, I have Pickens and Jamar Chase on bye and Brian Thomas Jr., so my top 3 wide receivers are all likely not going to play this week. So like Keon Coleman might be a guy that I throw in my lineup just hoping that he gets a lucky touchdown or a long play or something like that against the Miami secondary. Trey Tucker would not drop. Luke McCaffrey, you could drop. Jerry Jeudy, honestly, I'm fine dropping if you need to. But he does get a good matchup against the Jets and then Baltimore and then Las Vegas. So he's got a good string of matchups. Plus that playoff schedule, Tennessee, Chicago, Buffalo is kind of nice too. Mims, you could always drop. Kendrick Bourne, I mean, yeah, he's been kind of irrelevant. Cooper Kupp, fine dropping if you need to. Hutchinson, you could drop. Shepard, you could drop. Worthy, definitely don't drop. Hunter, I think will be back this season. It does kind of sound like, but I don't know. All right, well, that's week 10 waiver wire. Like I said, the rankings will be live by the time you watch this. Maybe there were some cool trade deadline moves, and you will have seen that already in the beginning of the video. If you enjoy the video, just make sure you hit the button that looks like this. It lets me know that this type of content that you guys want to see weekly. Tomorrow, running back rankings. Thursday, wide receiver rankings. And always just some quick housekeeping. I will be in Berlin for the weekend, so there will be no private Q and assault from me if you are a Big Dog member, but we do the private live stream every week to help you with your sit starts normally, all right? You can sign up to be a Big Dog member on bdge.co. Cheapest way, you get 3 months free if you go to our partner app or website, MGM. Deposit $10 or more if you're a first timer with code BDGE. Play any slip on there, and they're going to hit you with a promo code within their app to use on our website. All right? I love y'all. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Smoochies.